Welcome back. Thanks for your time on the Pulse. Well, a court battle is looming now between the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Motsoaledi, and the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit Holders Association. The permit was introduced nearly a decade ago. Last year, the Department of Home Affairs announced that Cabinet has agreed not to renew these permits. For more on this, we're joined now by Advocate Simba Chitando, lawyer for the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit Holders. Mr. Chitando, good evening. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. I do appreciate it. As I understand it, Cabinet made the decision to essentially withdraw the permit that Cabinet had introduced nearly a decade ago. On what basis are you going to court?
We're challenging the decision by Cabinet on various reasons, various grounds, including the fact that it is an unreasonable decision, it's irrational, it's not procedurally fair. I have to also update, one of the reasons why I'm here, is to update the public that the founding papers were filed and they were served. And at this stage, the Minister of Home Affairs has, through his Director General, filed answering papers to that application. The Zimbabwe Exemption Permit Holders Association will be filing replying affidavit in due course. And I can also update the public that several other organizations, prominent organizations that we have been working with, will be making similar applications to challenge what we believe a very bad decision that impacts thousands of people's lives directly and obviously indirectly their families, up to millions.
So we're talking, it's about 180,000 people live here under the permit legally that we're aware of. If we take their families into account, we're probably looking at about 1 million people is generally it may be more, is generally what we've seen. So under the law, before the permit was introduced, so let's go back 12 years ago, for argument's sake, you could not just come from Zimbabwe and live here. So many people came here that Cabinet introduced the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit. Essentially, they created a workaround around South African law. Cabinets are empowered to do that. There's no problem with that. Cabinet made the decision, so now it's withdrawing its own decision. Isn't the argument that Cabinet has the legal power to withdraw its own decision?
It gets even worse. Thank you for asking that question, Steve. The Minister's papers say Cabinet didn't make the decision, which is something that is very upsetting for the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit Holders Association. A decision was made by Cabinet on the 24th of November. In their answering papers, they said they didn't make a decision. The decision was actually made in September by the Minister. What is happening at the moment, and this is something that will be dealt with more in legal argument when the matter is heard, is that the Cabinet is running away from its own decision. Pressure is on. There's several institutions and organizations. We have shared our papers with the Helen Suzman Foundation, who are considering making their own application. Scalabrini may be making their own application. There's another Zimbabwean Exemption Society. There's obviously thousands of Zimbabwean exemption holders. There's another group besides the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit Holders Association who are going to make their own application. And that is pending. And prominent lawyers for the various organizations, institutions have been briefed to challenge this wrong decision. So it's very powerful that we're not alone. This is not an application or case that is, I've been the lawyer who has been the face of this matter for some time, but it is not my argument. There's several people that are challenging this. It's important.
Lots of things are going on here. It would seem to me unlikely, if you look at our appeal system, whether it's your application, whether it's the other applications, whether they're joined or not. If there's an appeal, you're probably not going to get a decision. You might get a decision on the High Court application, let's call it your first application, by, say, September. By the time it's appealed to the Supreme Court of Appeal, one way or another, the Constitutional Court, it'll all go past the deadline of December anyway. What's going to happen? Are people going to be in a sort of legal limbo, not sure if they're allowed to be here or not?
Great question. We will be approaching the Judge President, and we'll be approaching the judiciary for an expedited hearing. That is very important. Many people have been waiting many exemption holders have been waiting for an update. I've been inundated. The legal team has been inundated with requests, what's going to happen? We will ask for an expedited hearing. That's first. That's important. And if we don't get an expedited hearing, then we'll take legal action to make sure that the rights of exemption permit holders are protected before the deadline of 31 December 2022.
may not be in your interests to do that. You may want to drag the case out as long as possible, but that's a different question. I won't put that to you. Mr. Chitando, I do need to ask you a different question, which is not just about legalities, but it's about politics, and I'm afraid to say involves yourself. People here, in my view, people from Zimbabwe are here because of the economic policies pursued by ZANU-PF. Also, in my view, because many people believe there is no democratic freedom in Zimbabwe. You cannot go and criticize ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe on Zimbabwean television and get away with it. You're the leader of the Santon branch of ZANU-PF, is that correct?
That's correct, I am.
What are you doing to get ZANU-PF to change its policies?
Well, I'm not doing myself anything to change its policies. What I do think is happening is that I just want to correct you on a few things. The reason why, in my view, there's difficult economic times in Zimbabwe is because of the unlawful sanctions that are being put on Zimbabwe by many countries, including the United States of America, which the United Nations Special Rapporteur last year found, I think it was November, to be illegal and unlawful. And those sanctions, if they were to be removed, in my own view, and this is me speaking for myself, not for exemption permit holders.
Sure. No,
many exemption permit holders have their own view of why there's a problem. And I don't, and this, you're asking me in my capacity as a member of a political party. There's Zimbabweans who have got various reasons for why they are exemption permit holders. Some are against ZANU-PF, which is their prerogative. Some are pro-ZANU-PF, which is their prerogative. Some are indifferent, which is their prerogative. My job, when I represent the Exemption Permit Holders Association, or whichever client that comes to me, is to put that aside and enforce the rights that I think I should enforce in court.
You remind me for some reason of Dali Mpofu, who is an advocate who will represent people.
He's a friend of mine, I know him well.
Yeah,
yes.
who are very different, who have very different ideals to the ones that I know he holds. Yeah, that's what advocates do. I have no problem with that. The point, of course, is that Zimbabwe is in a long-running crisis. I accept what you say about sanctions to a point. I know that that's played a role. I accept the findings of the United Nations Special Rapporteur. The fact is that it would be better for all of us in southern Africa, and I believe that we're actually a regional economy. I don't think that the borders which were, I think you'll agree, imposed upon us by colonialists were necessarily a good thing. But if there was proper democracy in Zimbabwe, it would be a better country, and I don't believe that there's proper democracy there, and I believe that is because of the rule and the governance of ZANU-PF. I'd like you to respond to that.
That's your view. I disagree.
Sure.
In South Africa, there is no perfect democracy. Let's just start there.
Sure, but some are better than others.
Yeah, some better than others, but Zimbabwe far, in my view, far better than the manner in which you are projecting it to be. Zimbabwe, for instance, is a country where all the municipalities are controlled by the opposition. That's not the case here in South Africa. It's not the case in many other African countries. Zimbabwe is a country where, I think at some point in your questions to me, you asked, if we're on national television, you wouldn't be saying critical things of the government. That's not actually true. We have a situation where some of the most prominent lawyers in Zimbabwe are members of the opposition. I was told last night that Nelson Chamisa was here in South Africa. He moves around. He does what he does without hindrance, from what I've seen. So this is the point. I'm not here to talk ZANU-PF politics. I'm here to represent the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit Holders Association, challenge a decision that I believe, and many believe, both pro and anti-ZANU-PF, believe is a wrong decision. And important, a decision that I think is inconsistent with the Promotion of Just Administration Act and inconsistent with the Constitution. And we'll be challenging it on that basis.
Simba Chitando, as leader of the Santon branch of ZANU-PF, thank you. And advocate Simba Chitando, as the person representing Zimbabwean visa holders. I do appreciate the time. I appreciate the fact that you answered my questions as well. Thank you for your time.